Inside the Pylon, a Midwest college football podcast, joined as always by Clinton Boring. My name is Ryan Sadkowiak. Clinton, it is conference championship game weekend version of our pick'em here. Only one Big Ten game to pick, as that's what happens when you get to a conference championship game weekend. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm tired. Been up since
Same.
4:30. Tired.
Same. Actually,
I
that's
want
a
to go to
lie. I slept
bed.
till 6 today. It was great.
Whoop-de-doo for you. No, I'm good. I'm excited to go to the Big Ten Championship on Saturday. I obviously wish my team was playing in it. I tell you what, if I didn't have a ticket to already go to the Big Ten title, I'd probably be driving to Detroit to watch the Bobcats play. But since I bought my Big Ten ticket like a month ago, guess I'm going to go there. Paid
Clinton.
$100 for it, and now they're going for
Oh,
$12 a piece.
I was going to just ask you, do you want to play a game here live on the show? What
Nope.
ticket is more expensive, the Big Ten title game or the MAC title game?
$5 cheapest will get you into the MAC title.
All right, well, that
Is what it
answered
was
my
earlier
question.
today.
Um,
So $7 difference though, depending on where you want to drive. But
yeah, that's fair.
no, I'm good. Been a busy work week. How about you?
I'm fantastic because I'm 93% sure we got our playoff tickets.
What did you say?
I said I'm 93% sure we got our playoff tickets.
Who's we?
Me and my dad.
You're not taking Sam?
No, she does not want to go.
Okay, tell her I got 2 Ohio State playoff tickets if she wants one.
Do
I'm
you
just
really?
kidding. I don't.
I was going to say
Fuck,
she
man.
might. She might want
I
to go.
can't. I can't afford that. You know how much Ohio State's playoff ticket's going to be? Probably very similar to Notre Dame's. I'm not paying that much. Here's the thing, though. Notre Dame's going to go in and be competitive and might win. I don't know if Ohio State, they might get waxed by 30.
Listen,
I'm not paying all that money.
we got our tickets from the Catholic Church.
Wow.
I'm not kidding.
Jesus loves you.
My dad's cousin knows a priest who works for the seminary that's on campus or something like that. I don't understand how it works. Um, but we got them for face value, and I'm pretty sure he said they're at the 50-yard line, so it is going to be dope.
Nice.
I'm very excited.
Sorry your bank account's empty, but
Yeah, well, you know what? It was worth it. Worth it. Worth it. I can't
better
remember
hope they don't lose to Jalen Milroe in Alabama.
Listen, the last time I went to a Notre Dame game with my dad was the 2022 Ohio State game, and I have no recollection of the entire second half because I had too much Gatorade vodka before the game at the tailgate.
Was that was the OSU game?
It
Here.
was in Columbus, yes.
Nice.
Good times. We can start about the playoff today because it's an enlightening ranking in light of that's confusing. It became an enlightening ranking because of the interview that Ward Manuel gave with Reese Davis and ESPN after the fact. Um, I guess we should start with the.
Are you going to talk about Bama and
No,
SMU?
I'm not going to talk about Bama and SMU.
Okay, I was
I'm gonna
saying,
talk
hold
about-
on to that because I have something to ask you about with that.
So we're live on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, you know where to find us at ITP CFB on the YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you can get notifications whenever we drop these videos. And as always, if you'd prefer to listen to us in podcast form, we're on Apple and Spotify and wherever you get your shows. Inside the Pylon of Midwest College Football Podcast there. Subscribe to the show so you can get notified anytime one of our episodes drops. While you are there, please drop a star review and a rating. It helps us grow the show, and we would greatly appreciate it. And your one-stop shopping for all ITP content is going to be on Twitter. There you can find us at ITPCFB. All the links will be sent out there. You can interact with the show as we go through and laugh at our picks if you want, because we're not very smart. I'm not very smart. I will not speak for Clinton, who at least was 500 this year. Good for you.
I finished at 500, right at it.
I don't know how many games you beat me by because I haven't put the last 2 weeks into the spreadsheet because I knew that you already beat me. And I don't want to know how badly you beat me by.
That's fair.
It's a pride thing. So, to recap, the newest college football playoff committee ranking that dropped on Tuesday. Well, there was a change in the top two because Ohio State lost. Oregon remains at number 1. Texas ascends to number 2. Penn State at number 3. Notre Dame at number 4. Georgia finds themselves back in the top 5 at 5th. Ohio State fell to number 6, just ahead of Tennessee at 7. SMU is at 8. Indiana at 9. Boise State, a top 10 team, at number 10. This is where the controversy came in a little bit here, Clinton. We were talking on Monday about where Miami is going to fall in relation to the conglomerate of SEC teams with 3 losses, and as it turns out,
They
they
bisected them.
they bisected it. Alabama in at number 11. As of this recording, they would currently be the last at-large team into the playoff. Miami at 12 would be your first team out. Ole Miss is 13. South Carolina is 14. Set Arizona State 15, Iowa State 16, and Clemson at 17. Those are all notable because if any of those 3 teams wins this weekend, they are automatically in the playoff as a conference champion auto bid. So the notable thing that
This
Ward,
real quick. This coming from Ryan, who said, "I see no 9-3 or no 3-loss teams making the playoff, and we could very well have 2.
we're not going to have 2. Oh, I guess we
Bama and
could.
Clemson.
Yeah. Okay. I said
Bama
no.
and
I
Clemson
said no. I said no 9-3 at large. I said no 9-3 at large.
at large. Okay, that's fair.
So
Still, a 3-loss conference champ is also poo.
well, I figured that was a possibility in the ACC or the Big 12. I didn't think it would be the ACC this year. I thought it could be the Big 12 this year, and it's wild that we're in a situation where the Big 12 or the ACC champion could be the 12 seed here. I did not have that on my bingo card before the season started. But notable here is what Ward Manuel told Reese Davis after the rankings were released on the ESPN show. He said the teams that do not play this weekend will not move in relation to other teams that do not play this weekend, meaning that Alabama, Miami, Ole Miss, and South Carolina, that is a fixed ranking. It will not change regardless of what happens with, say, Clemson, who South Carolina beat last weekend, even though that then, in theory, makes their resume look better because they beat the ACC champion. The committee is not going to treat it as such. They are treating all teams that have already played all their games as a static entity. Therefore, that means Clinton, Miami, Ole Miss, South Carolina will not make the playoff this season. Alabama, currently occupying that last at-large spot, is in a precarious position themselves because if Clemson comes in and bid steals by beating SMU this weekend, there is a chance that the Mustangs remain ahead of the Crimson Tide and thus knock Alabama out of the playoff. Your thoughts on the top 25, I guess, that dropped on Tuesday?
So I have pushback on your response because, per the solid verbal today in Ty, it does not sound like Miami is completely done.
What's the scenario they make it?
Because I heard that today, in which Miami would get in is SMU gets blown out, and then Boise State loses.
But if Boise State loses, there's still a group of 5 team that comes in.
Somehow in his scenario, he worked it to where Miami could get in.
Because
I heard that too, Clemson would move up, right? Mm-hmm. They would be one of the top 4.
Yep.
So that would eliminate SMU.
They would not necessarily be one of the top 4. They could be one of the top 4, but they would be in the field.
In this speculation, since Clemson's higher ranked than UNLV, I don't think that UNLV is going to jump Clemson, given that they're beating number 10 Boise when Clemson is beating number 8 SMU. So give Clemson the 4 seed. So that, and then SMU is out.
Yep.
Boise State is out. Somehow he worked it in there that Miami gets in.
He forgot about Alabama. He forgot about the Big 12 team because Miami's going to get jumped by either Arizona State or Iowa State. There's not. Because I heard that too, and I was not following what he was saying. I don't think that there's a realistic scenario.
Well, see, that's what I was sitting here thinking. I'm like, when we saw him at 12, I'm like, I'm pretty sure Miami's dead. And the article I read about Miami today pretty much said they're dead.
I mean, there could be a scenario that I'm not thinking of, but even if Boise and SMU fall behind them, thus putting. So let's say, in theory, here. Boise State and SMU both lose and fall behind Miami. So Miami then jumps up, in this case, to number 10. You would then have the group of 5, the Big 12, and the Clemson that would jump them, who are all behind them right now, which means that 12, 11, and 10 would be out of the playoff because of auto bid. So Miami would not be in that scenario.
I don't know. We're going to have to hit him up on Twitter and have him explain it further. Because he swears there's a way.
I don't even know if he swore that there was a way. I think he said, because I think you got.
I thought he said that is the only way that they can happen.
I think he forgot about the Big 12 team.
Yeah, that certainly could be right. So you should point that out to him on Twitter and then see if he
No,
responds
see,
to you.
I don't care enough that much.
He's listening right now, actually.
Yeah, that'd be crazy.
No
Doubt
way.
it.
No, I
Okay.
certainly see with that. That's why I wanted to bring that up, just for some further clarity, as I was listening in the car driving, so I probably did not catch everything. But I thought Miami was dead, and then I listened to that, and I was like, maybe. But I don't think so. I think they're toast. I think Bama is all the way in because I don't think Clemson's going to win. So,
yeah.
anyways.
So Bama fans will be big SMU fans this weekend.
So I guess really my biggest thing here before we just on the playoff rankings. So you're pretty much saying, how far back did Ward Manuel indicate teams can't move up? Because my thought was going to ask, can Indiana possibly move up?
No, well, he said teams that are not playing will not move in relation to other teams that are not playing.
Okay, so SMU
So
is
he
playing.
So
Indiana's not going to jump Tennessee or Ohio State, but
right?
They could jump SMU.
Yes. So if SMU loses, there is a chance that Indiana will, in fact, be ranked ahead of where SMU currently is. But if SMU wins, it doesn't really matter because then they'd be likely the 3 seed.
Yeah.
But that's one of the fascinating things that I am interested in seeing how they treat the conference championship game losers, because there's something we talked about a little bit on Monday is how much are they going to get penalized? Is it going to depend on the score? And how far are they going to move some of these teams down? And I think there's a couple different interesting spots in here. And we talked a little bit about I was adamant that they would not move a team out of the field for losing conference championship game weekend. And then people were pointing out on Twitter, well, this was a feature in the 4-team playoff. And the most recent example was USC 2 years ago. And granted, they got their ass kicked in this game. But they went into conference.
But they had the argument. They could have argued Caleb Williams had a hamstring injury, so they were not 100%.
That's true. So 2 years ago, USC went into conference championship weekend, ranked number 4. They got their ass kicked in the Pac-12 title game by Utah again, as Clinton mentioned, because Caleb Williams suffered a second quarter hamstring injury. They didn't do anything in the second half. They fell all the way down to 10. So there is precedent for this to happen, and I'm interested. So if you look, there's 2 teams that this is going to potentially happen to if they lose. One is Boise State, because Boise State is in a position right now where they would be an at-large team because they're 10th in the playoff field. However, you're at that spot where you're at the tail end of it and you lose to a team that's only 20th right now. That seems like a situation to me where Boise State loses, they are definitively out of the field. I don't see the committee keeping them at number 10, even if it's a close game. SMU, it gets a little bit more precarious because you have 2 at-large teams behind them right now. They're at number 8 in the rankings. You're playing I get Clemson 17. I get they're 9-3. But it's kind of one of those things, and this seems like it's been a conversation for the last 6 weeks, is it's a helmet school, right? Clemson has that cachet of being 2-time national champion. Dabo Swinney's one of 2 active coaches who've won a national title. If it's a close game, what happens to SMU? Do they stay in the field or do they fall behind Bama? And perhaps it's a discussion of overall score. If SMU comes in and loses 45-10, which I don't see happening because Clemson hasn't played well against a single team with a pulse this year. But if SMU gets blown out, are they behind Bama? If SMU loses a close game, do they stay ahead of Bama? I'm fascinated to see with that. And then you look at the 2 big games that we'll be talking about here in the Big Ten and the SEC. What's going to happen to the loser of that game? Because as things stand right now, Georgia, I believe, would be the 7 seed in this playoff. So if they lose by 2 touchdowns to Texas, Clinton, is there a world where Georgia falls to a spot where they are on the road in the first round of the college football playoff?
That was one of the things I had marked today is if Georgia loses, where do they end up? And I don't even think it has to be a 2-touchdown loss. And that's where I was sitting here looking at. If Georgia loses, you would assume Ohio State jumps them. They beat Tennessee head-to-head. So would they stay in front of Tennessee? Are they going to honor the head-to-head?
Yeah,
or the fact that Georgia has 3 losses and Tennessee doesn't? So Tennessee hosts and Georgia doesn't?
Could you imagine that they let Georgia loses by, let's say, 7 points to Texas. They move them down 2 spots. and all of a sudden you're the road team in an 8-9 matchup against a team that you already beat this year.
Tennessee. Yeah.
I don't know, like, and that's the other part of this too that I didn't even write down on my playoff talking point was we could end up with potentially, depending on how this plays out, a Georgia-Tennessee rematch in round one. We could
And
end
an
up
Ohio
with
State-Indiana rematch.
an Ohio State-Indiana rematch. So do they fudge the seedings in the first rounds to avoid those?
I don't think Georgia's moving anywhere, even with a loss, barring a complete massacre. They're only going to drop one spot. In theory, they're only going to drop to Ohio State.
But see, if we're
they're not going to stay at 5.
But that's the thing is that because I think in theory I agree with you. But if they move them down one spot, then the 8-9 matchup becomes a Georgia-Tennessee rematch, and the 7-10 matchup becomes an Ohio State-Indiana rematch.
So you're going to have to put Georgia at 10, and then Indiana at 9, and Tennessee at 8, and then it's Ohio State.
I could see them just not
Georgia, and then Tennessee, Indiana.
I could see them just not moving Georgia at all.
I don't think that's possible. I think people will be irate if Georgia loses again after how bad they've looked and gets to sit at 5. Because especially when Ohio State and Georgia's, you said on Monday, you talked about it, their body of work is essentially the same. I don't care that you played in the championship game, you lost. You don't have a championship, so you don't get to claim higher when you lost. You don't have the championship.
But then the counterpoint to that is you lost to a team that you already beat. It's very hard to beat the same team in the same season twice. And Ohio State's most recent performance is a loss to a 500 team. Why should they get rewarded with a better seed for losing and completely losing their opportunity to play for a championship?
I don't know.
I agree with you. I'm not saying I don't agree with you, but I'm saying I don't see them, like, unless Georgia gets completely blown out, I don't see a scenario where they move down into a road playoff game. And I also don't see a scenario where the committee changes the rankings to then create 2 rematches in the first round. I don't believe one of their criteria is avoiding rematches, but I cannot see that happening.
Yeah. I feel like they tried to avoid that kind of stuff in the 4 team, but in a 12 and then 14 team, I think at some point it's going to become unavoidable unless people literally know you're sitting there messing with the rankings to deliberately do it. Like, at this point, you got big enough brands. Yeah, Georgia, Tennessee's a rematch, but you know how much that's going to draw attention to it? Ohio State, Indiana's a rematch. That one may not as much, but Ohio State's a huge brand. They're going to pull attention to that game.
Clinton, if it's an Ohio State Indiana rematch, you're getting the noon game on Saturday.
They may, but at this point, I think Indiana would beat Ohio State.
Well, then the other aspect of this conversation too is the Penn State conversation. What happens if Penn State loses a close game? What happens if Penn State loses a blowout? Because I know what happens if Penn State wins that game. They're either going to be in the number 1 or the number 2 seed, and then Oregon will be the 5 seed. Like, that's easy. Yep. That's cut and dry. But if Penn State loses, let's say a 7 to 10 point game, it's a very similar game to how it played out against Ohio State. Do they fall behind Notre Dame? Do they fall behind Ohio State because they now have the same record as Ohio State and lost to Ohio State? I have no idea what they're going to do with these conference champions, but fascinated to find out. I'm sure there's not going to be any consternation about it.
No, I'm really intrigued. I think if Penn State loses, I think they're going to fall behind Ohio State. If the committee is that high on head-to-head, like sometimes they say they are, then they're going to go behind Ohio State.
Well, so maybe then that's your answer, is if Penn State loses. But, I mean, then I'm sure Penn State fans will be pissed off by that, falling from 3 to 7 or something like that. Maybe.
I mean, Ohio State fell 5 spots. So
yeah,
Penn State's only falling 4.
Yeah, but they lost to a shitty team, Clinton.
Well, my other aim is Penn State didn't technically earn their way into the championship. Another team lost.
Yes,
another team lost to get themselves
They earned their way in by not losing to Michigan. They could have lost to Maryland too, and they didn't.
No.
They went into that game. They had to win.
You didn't backdoor your way in like Clemson.
They literally went into that game against Maryland in a win or your win in your in situation.
But into the weekend, you didn't control your own destiny. You had to have Ohio State lose to get in, and they lost. So therefore, I'm not giving you 100% credit for getting in because another team had to lose for you to get there. Clemson's not getting credit for getting into the ACC championship. Miami lost.
Because they lost, and then they sat
their
at
game
home all day.
Yeah, but their game was irrelevant because it wasn't a conference game. They played an SEC team. So it didn't matter what happened to their game. I can see your argument if Clemson, if they had lost to another ACC team, it would have mattered because they would have been
lost two, or I guess they only lost one ACC game.
Mm-hmm.
They lost to Georgia too.
Yeah. Miami would still be in there if that was the scenario, if they had two ACC losses. But I don't know what happens. I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how these shake out. People are always going to be pissed off that their team's here and their team's not there. Listen, Penn State fans, if you're listening, you've had a great season. We all know what they did to you a few years back when Penn State won the Big Ten championship with 2 losses and Ohio State sat at home with 1 loss. They left Penn State out of the playoff and they put Ohio State in the playoff. If you think it's going to work out any differently this time, I think you're high. I'm not saying that it shouldn't. Ohio State's the bigger brand. I don't care that they lost to Michigan. They're the bigger brand, and the committee's going to they're going to put them where they want them to. And if Penn State gets screwed, they care less about Penn State than they do Ohio State. They care less about, I don't know, they care a lot about the SEC. So it's hard to pick out an SEC team to say. But Georgia's their honey, right? Like, Georgia's their everything. So they'll do whatever they want with Georgia. I think somehow, some way, Georgia's getting Indiana and Ohio State's getting Tennessee. However they want to shake it out, that's what's going to happen.
I'm going to have to workshop this later because maybe we end up in a situation where it's – I mean, I guess if Georgia beats Texas, it doesn't really matter.
So here's the one question. If Georgia loses and Penn State loses and SMU loses, why is SMU out and the other 2 get to stay in? Georgia has 3 losses. Why do they get to stay in? SMU only would have 2.
So I was listening to Andy and Ari yesterday, and Ari made a point about like the tiering of different and like how different teams are held at different standards in regards to like the seeding with the playoff, and it made a lot of sense, and I thought it was a really good point, and I'm gonna try to paraphrase it as best that I can, but he basically said that when you play a worse schedule, the standard that you have to play to at that schedule is higher. You get fewer shots at a mulligan. So if you look at a team like Indiana or SMU, whose strength of schedule is not, or even Notre Dame, you can throw Notre Dame into this example as well because their strength of schedule is not good.
Mm-hmm.
When you're playing that schedule, you have to be near perfect because the landmines on it, people don't respect. So even though your strength of schedule is not good, the fact that you were still able to perform against that schedule should be rewarded. And if you have that extra slip up, hello, Miami, then you get discarded and people don't feel sorry for you. However, when you're a team like Georgia or Alabama or Ole Miss and you're playing this perceived tougher schedule, you get an extra mulligan or 2 because of the level of schedule you're playing in. I get this gets murky because they lost to crappy teams, but their resumes are bolstered by good wins. Therefore, they get a little bit more latitude in order to work with, I guess. So like you look at Ohio State, they fall to number 6 despite a terrible loss to a bad football team. But they've also beat 2 teams that are going to be in the college football playoff.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Ohio State is where they are.
One may be the 1 seed.
Correct. Georgia.
Fairly easily.
Even though Georgia got their ass kicked by Ole Miss and was down 28-0 and ended up losing to Alabama, those are still 2 fringe playoff teams that they lost, and they beat the crap out of the team that's currently number 2 in the country. When you do that, you get an extra mulligan. So if Georgia loses a rematch then to Texas, and SMU loses to a crappy Clemson team after losing to a BYU team that's still good but not fantastic, and their best win is Louisville, that's why.
Yeah. So let's say all 3 lose. Georgia and Penn State get to stay. They're not on any threat to get bounced out. SMU is the only one of the 3. So why SMU and why are you leaving out SMU and putting in Bama?
I mean, I wouldn't. I think unless SMU gets their ass kicked by Clemson, I think they should be in the field regardless.
Because I can get your argument when it's opposing teams who are technically already safely in the playoff, or Penn State, Georgia are playing in their championship games. SMU earned their spot in their championship game. Alabama's only getting moved up because they're Alabama. If that team is Ole Miss or South Carolina right now, Miami is the 11th seed. They're there because they're Bama. So we're just going to utilize the helmet game, and if SMU loses, we're going to throw them out by 4 spots, and we're going to move Alabama up.
Well, I don't know that that's necessarily going to happen. It's on the table.
I don't feel like it should, but some of the speculation and the frustration from SMU fans is, though it sounds like the way Manuel explained it is, it's completely fair game that SMU is left out and Alabama gets the last spot.
I think his phrasing was it could happen, and I think he was leaving the door open in case it's a blowout or something, where you look at it and they come into this game and they lose 45-10, and then you're like, okay, I don't need to see this again. Let's get this team out of here. I think if it's
the
a
other
close
thought
competitive
is,
game where they
do
lose
you
in
think
overtime,
SMU is going to lose like that to Clemson though?
No, I just said that. Clemson hasn't played well against a team with a pulse all year. I don't think there. I mean, there's a universe where Clemson comes in and dominates and wins the game, but I would not bet against that, or I would not bet on that happening.
SMU forgets to get off the bus.
Yeah,
no. Kevin Jennings can run. He's not the size of Lenora Sellers, but he can run. And what Lenora Sellers just did to Clemson last week,
right?
I'd be pretty nervous if I was Clemson.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it ends up being a moot point because I think SMU probably ends up winning that game anyway. But if it's a close game, I don't think that they should be penalizing SMU by dropping them below an Alabama team that has lost 2 of their last 3 games. That's not true. Is it true?
What?
I'm trying to do them. When did Alabama lose?
No, Alabama hasn't lost 2 of their last 3. Okay. That was Miami who lost 2 of their last 3.
They should either way. They should not be falling behind a 9-3 Alabama team that's 2 weeks removed from getting beat to death by a crappy Oklahoma team.
Yeah. So I really have 2 more. Okay. My one is we're speculating if Georgia loses, what happens to Texas if they lose? They're clearly in, but where do they fall to? Are they getting the 5, or are they going to fall back worse than that?
I think they'll probably be the 5 seed, depending on what happens with Penn State, Oregon.
Despite the fact that they have a not good resume.
Well, no, because then if you're let's say Oregon wins for this to play this scenario out. I think Penn State likely falls behind Notre Dame, and that if Texas loses a close game to Georgia, let's say it's a close game, because if it's a blowout, then all bets are off, right? Like I don't feel comfortable making prognostications on what happens if Texas loses by 15.
What are you clarifying as a blowout? Double digit? 14 or more? 17 or more?
Like 14 or more, that's not like a late Georgia touchdown. Like even Georgia beat Tennessee by 14. That game was not a blowout. Like they scored late to put window dressing on it. If it looks similar to how the first Texas-Georgia game looked, I would consider that to be a blowout again. If Texas gets blown out, all bets are off. I think if they lose a close game, they fall in before Notre Dame at the 5 seed. Because if you look at their 2 resumes, their best win is the same. They both went to Kyle Field and won. And after that, it's just a bunch of I guess you could argue that Notre Dame has the extra ranked win because they beat Army, which I don't know how much that actually ends up moving the needle. But given it's a pretty similar, and that's why I moved Texas ahead of Notre Dame in my rankings this week, is because their resume is basically the same. But yeah, that's what I would envision happening.
All right. So my next one was a lot of people were wondering why Alabama over Miami. The argument big time is, well, Miami only has 2 losses and Bama has 3. Are we really going to start this slippery slope where we let a 3-loss team who's not even playing in championship weekend in the playoff? Well, Alabama, given the current top 25, is 3-1 against them. Miami is 0-1. Alabama's best win is Georgia. Can you name Miami's best win, Ryan?
Probably Louisville.
It is Duke, who's 9-3 and 4th in the ACC.
A 9-3 Duke team, who by the way is not ranked.
Yes,
which is kind of ridiculous.
The worst loss, you can easily say Alabama has the worst loss. They were embarrassed, 24-3 to a mid to below mid Oklahoma team. Miami, I would say it's Georgia Tech at this point, given that they have more losses than Syracuse.
Yeah, 7-5 team.
But then you get into the eye test. So when we watch the games all season, who has looked like the better team? Given the wins, I would say Alabama, right? Because they have 3 wins against the top 25, where Bama has at least, I know they got shellacked by Oklahoma. But to me, Alabama's been more consistent in showing an all-around game versus Miami's defense has sucked all year, and their offense has had to carry them.
Yeah, I think the issue with Miami is we've kind of been waiting for the other shoe to drop with them since that Virginia Tech game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they had the weird last second game where it was a touchdown, it wasn't a touchdown, they didn't really know what was going on, but everyone thought they lost to Virginia Tech, and then a week later they were getting their ass kicked by Cal for 3.5 quarters, and then
Mm-hmm.
pulled
Had
out.
to fend off Duke, who
Had to
was their
defend.
best
Yep.
win.
Yeah, they were
And
down midway through the third quarter against Duke, and then turned on the Jets late to pull away in that one, and ended up almost covering the spread.
did the same thing to Louisville. Turned the Jets on late against Louisville to pull away and make it look prettier.
Well, I think that
So,
still only ended up being a one-score game.
well, I mean, they had to turn on the Jets there. You're going to lose.
Right.
Then you look head to head, right? So if you just, a lot of people like this play. Well, you played on a neutral field, who would win? It sounds like in general, from what I've read, Alabama would be about a 6.5-point favorite right now on a neutral field to Miami. So I'm not arguing one or the other. As people were asking why Bama over Miami, there's some reasons as to why the committee is most likely putting them there versus not having Miami there. To me, when you start entering the multiple loss round, this is not like they're doing an 11-1 Indiana out for a 3-loss Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
2 and 3 losses, you're kind of, I don't know, you're not one and the same, but you're not that far off. We're debating, should either one of you be in the playoff? That's the argument, right? Like, you're both quite not good enough to be said you should be in, but let's compare your resumes and see who's better. Right. What does Miami do? We talk about strength of record. What would Miami have done against Bama's schedule? 5 losses? 4 losses?
See, I don't like the whole eye test, strength of record, what would so-and-so do against so, because that, like, it operates under the assumption that teams on one schedule are, this level of talent. Because it's like it's basically like, I hate this conversation at the end of every year where we start talking about point spreads and talent composites, because that's not what wins the game. And that's what a lot of these power rankings are made off of, is talent composite, I think. I don't actually know how they fully go together, but like, it's operating under the assumption that, teams A, B, and C are good and teams X, Y, and Z are not good. And that's how we get this strength of schedule number. So like, Duke, for example, I think is actually a pretty good example. Coming into the year, you said it yourself. Duke is not going to be good this year. They're 9-3. That's a pretty decent football team. That's a good coaching job by Manny Diaz. No one's going to sit there. No one was sitting there before. I think you could have people right now saying Oklahoma's better than Duke. I guarantee you that there's a lot. If you put a poll up on Twitter right now, who's the better football team, Oklahoma or Duke? A lot of people would just say Oklahoma. Is that true? Probably not. Which I think is kind of the folly around these strength of schedule rankings, is they make assumptions that may or may not be true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The reason I bring that up is because that's points that's been brought up all year, right? They tried to do it to Indiana. Well, what would Indiana done against Georgia's schedule? I don't know. They play in the Big Ten, not the SEC.
But it's a lazy argument.
Mm-hmm. It's just automatically assuming Indiana or Georgia would just run rampant on Indiana's schedule. When we watch UMass played a 4-quarter game with Georgia.
Right. And maybe the way that this year has played out across the 4 quote-unquote power conferences, maybe we should be rethinking how we perceive these teams, because we have a team last year that was a G5 team that's playing for the ACC title this weekend. We had a bottom-of-the-barrel Pac-12 team that's playing for the Big 12 title. We had a team that lost the Pac-12 title game last year that ran roughshed over the Big 10 this year. We had a team in the Big 12 last year just run roughshed over the SEC. So, like, maybe our entire perception of this sport is just not accurate at all.
Right. This is why you play the games.
It's the self-fulfilling prophecy that we talk about all the time, where 17 SEC teams end up in the top 25 each year, and then they don't play anyone in the non-conference. So they're all 4-0 or 3-1 in the non-con, and then they beat each other in conference play. And everyone's like, look at all these good teams beating each other, when in fact they all suck, or 80% of them suck, and they don't play anyone in the non-conference. So we don't have any frame of reference for how good these teams actually are, because they play shit in the non-conference. Ole Miss's non-conference schedule, Clinton, this year, piss. Shane Beamer... this fired me up.
I watched that video today.
He's up on the podium talking about, oh my God, our schedule's so tough. Maybe they don't care about strength of schedule. Maybe we shouldn't play these strength of schedule teams. This dude, you played Akron, Old Dominion, and Wofford in the non-conference this year. Motherfucker, your schedule could not get any weaker if you tried.
Yeah.
That's a joke. It's a joke,
watched the
Clinton.
video.
It's awful. It's horrendous. What are you arguing? Lane Kiffin over here talk like their toughest non-conference game was Wake Forest.
Did you see the stuff when Bielema came back at him and then argued that Illinois should be in over Ole Miss?
It's ridiculous.
Oh, it's hilarious.
You sit here and pump your own conference up. You don't play anyone else. Like, oh my, they know exactly what they're doing.
You also only play 8 conference games, not
buddy.
9.
They know exactly what they are doing because it's all job security. You know, Lane Kiffin's got to be feeling some heat. He was out for begging for money last offseason, and his ass came out and lost 3 games again. Old 3-loss Lane Kiffin.
Every year, it's like clockwork
with his own expensive roster. And all he's out here doing now is
Lane Kiffin.
He's got to be out here making excuses. Oh my God, we have it so tough down here. How would we know? You played nobody outside of your own conference. You played Wake Forest. And that's not even the Wake Forest of the Sam Hartman years when they were actually a respectable team. They suck. They're terrible.
What was the I'm blanking on his name. What was the kid that left Wake Forest to go to Georgia and then he quit? Jamie Newman? Is that his name?
Jamie Newman. Yep.
We would decide to go to the draft and no one even sniffed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what he's doing now. Probably flipping burgers at Wendy's, but
like at least Alabama tried to go north and play a tough game. At least LSU tried to play 2 California teams. It's not their fault that they were.
Georgia squared off against Clemson.
Georgia, yep, squared off against Clemson. Ole Miss, what'd you do? Nothing. Shane
Texas
Beamer.
A&M played Notre Dame.
Texas A&M played Notre Dame. Shane Beamer, what'd you do? You got your Palmetto Bowl, and then you played 3 Sisters of the Poor, Blind, and Deaf.
Yep, and we're not even sure at this point that Clemson's even a notable win.
Right.
If they lose this weekend, they're a 4-loss team.
Clinton, they almost lost to Pitt. Pitt ended on a 5-game losing streak.
And I know how we like to say 4-loss SEC teams are better than 1-loss Big 10, Big 12, and ACC teams. But, you know, I'm glad we're a Big 10 podcast and not an SEC
that's
podcast.
That's my John L. Smith.
I don't think I could do it.
That's disgusting. It makes me want to puke.
If you would have, when we were discussing what we were going to do here, if you'd have told me we got to be an SEC podcast, I think I'd have told you stick it where the sun don't shine.
No, I'd rather not. I'd
rather cover the Big 12 or the ACC.
Yeah, man.
The SEC. I don't want to be in on that crap.
Anyway, that was fun. I'm glad I got that off my chest. I've been holding.
Well, just wait till Oregon, Ohio State, or Penn State wins the whole thing this year, and then the Big 10 goes back to back essentially, and the SEC is going to be chirping anyways. Well, if we'd have got Ole Miss and South Carolina in, whatever.
Okay, that's
playoff talk over. Let's pick our games. We got a banger coming up.
Buddy, I didn't even play the playoff sound. I was just ready to get in on that, and we just went at it. But
Ryan is emotional.
I was emotional.
Emotional damage.
Picks of the week.
Clinton, before we get to the Big Ten, let's start in Motown, Detroit, a game that's near and dear to our hearts. The Mid-American Conference Championship game. It is a rematch, the Battle of the Bricks Part 2, Miami versus Ohio. The true Battle of Ohio. Ohio's 2 true college football teams.
2 best colleges.
2.
There, I said it.
2 Ohio schools are playing for conference championships this weekend, Clinton, and none of them are Ohio State. Miami, the Red Hawks, they started the season 1-4. They are on a 7-game winning streak. They were, when we were looking preseason at teams that we thought would contend for the MAC title this year. I don't know that we necessarily had Ohio in the mix.
No, but we said Miami because we said some off chance maybe they compete for the group of 5.
We did. We definitely said that. And I've heard other things saying, hey, Miami goes 12-0. I'm like, they're not going 12-0. They're not beating Notre Dame. They didn't. NIU did. So they started the season.
There was a MAC school that clipped them. It just wasn't the one we could have thought.
So they started the season 1-4. They lost to Northwestern, Cincinnati, Notre Dame. They needed overtime to beat UMass and then lost to Toledo. So things were looking rough for them to start the year, man. But 7 straight wins since. during those 7 consecutive games, they allowed 20 points or more only twice. 20 points to Ohio on 2 garbage time touchdowns, and then a couple weeks ago they allowed 21 to Ball State. In that game against Ohio earlier this year, I think we talked about it 2 weeks ago, they were up 30-6 until Ohio scored a touchdown with about 6 minutes left, and then they got one more garbage time touchdown there to make that look a little closer than it is. I pulled up a couple of stats here. Miami running back Keon Mosey Clinton having a really good season, over 1,000 yards. But I broke down his games. In Miami's 4 losses, he has 30 carries for 100 yards and no touchdowns total across those 4 games. In their 8 wins, he has gone over 100 yards 7 times. He has 129 carries for 945 yards and 4 touchdowns in their 8 wins. The only game he did not go over 100 yards in those 8 wins was against NIU, and he still went for 91. He's been really good this year, and if he gets his, there's a very good chance that Miami wins. Brett Gabbert has been better of late. He does have 10 interceptions on the year. Both starting quarterbacks in this game have 10 interceptions on the year.
10 for 10.
6 of his 10 interceptions have come in Miami's 4 losses. So if you're looking for keys to the game for Ohio in this one, it's shut down Mosey and it's pick off Brett Gabbert. Miami spreads the ball around pretty well. They have 3 receivers with at least 39 catches and 589 receiving yards, whereas Ohio, their guy is Coleman Owen. He has 1,000 yards on the season. He has 7 of Parker Navarro's 10 touchdowns this year. Ohio makes their bread on the ground, man. Navarro, 876 yards rushing. Anthony Tyus, 960 yards rushing. Navarro is he's kind of like Riley Leonard Light. Not as good through the air, but he's pretty good on the ground. He has 13 rushing touchdowns on the year. Ohio as a team, only 16 turnovers forced on the year, 9 interceptions, 7 fumbles recovered. I think that's going to be a key to the game in this one for them, Clinton. Got to get some turnovers.
So this is the Battle of the Bricks. This is the first time they've ever met in the MAC title game. They're 2-2 over their last 4 matchups. You already mentioned Miami won 30-20 in the regular season. Now, since I did a little data myself, Ryan, since the Bobcat Red Hawk game, OU has scored 189 points. That's an average of 37.8 points per game. The Red Hawks have scored 31 points per game. Tech game from Toledo. Houday, go Bengals. Houday, baby. Go Bengals. Love it. Ryan, you put that up there just special for me to make me feel all good inside.
I did.
The Bobcat defense. So we see offense 37.8 points per game to 31 points per game, both over 30. Since that game, the Bobcat defense is only allowing 10.8 points per game, while Miami is only allowing 11.2 points per game. You mentioned the Miami tailback. Do we call them tailbacks anymore or just call them running backs instantly? The notable stat for OU is that their run D ranks 8th in the country, allowing only 100.4 yards per game. And in their last 3 games, they've only allowed 64 yards per game on the ground. That's pretty impressive. OU is only 1 spot behind Ohio State's rush defense, which is 7th in the country, allowing, I believe, 95 yards per game. I know they're in the MAC, but they play their own level of competition. That's pretty damn impressive. The keys I had noted here, Parker Navarro, you're 10 for 10, man. You got 10 tutties and 10 picks. Take care of the ball. OU has to utilize the run game between Navarro and Tyus, who've combined, as you mentioned, their individual stats. They combined for almost 1,800 yards on the ground together and 21 touchdowns together. Miami, the flip side, you have to protect Gabbert. He's been sacked 24 times this year. However, in the first matchup, OU had 0 sacks, so they protected him well enough to beat the Bobcats the first time. Can the Red Hawks mimic the fast start from the October game where they got out to a 16-0 lead, eventually to the 30-6 lead into the third? This is going to be a great game, man. I think it's going to be really close. I think it's something that, damn, you almost wish you could be there to watch, right? Because who knows when these two are going to meet again. I believe they're going to go to Pods, I believe, next year, when UMass joins. So I'm not really sure how that shakes out when it comes to terms of who gets in the championship. Do you still take the 2 best?
I thought,
Is the
did
pods
they do pods
really
this year?
Maybe they did pods this year.
I think the
but
pods is
UMass
just
comes
a
in next
scheduling
year.
thing.
Yeah, just for scheduling. So you get your top 2, which is pretty much what everybody does now.
Mm-hmm.
So we may get this again, but this could be a rarity, right? Like, I'm kind of bummed I'm going to be on the road traveling to Indianapolis and probably miss the first half of this game. And I need to get into a bar somewhere and sit my butt down because I think it's going to be a good one. I think I'm going to record it at home just in case so I come home and watch it. But anyways, what's your line you got for this one? I had 1.5 on ESPN earlier today.
I got Miami -2 here.
Okay, well, that makes it even better. Give me the Ohio Bobcats +2 points in Detroit.
I don't feel good about it, Clinton, but I'm sticking with Miami. It's just going to be a low-scoring game. Whoever wins the turnover battle is going to win this game. I mean, that's kind of my no shit Sherlock statement of the night. But I think Miami has a couple different ways to move the ball, whereas Ohio, their offense is basically, we need to run it, we need to get Coleman in the ball. And Miami has a pretty good defense. I think they'll be able to shut that down a little bit better in offensively.
Hard to beat the same team twice, Ryan.
It is hard to beat the same team twice. I hope I am wrong. I don't like picking Miami. Don't like Miami. Don't like Miami at all. I have no problem admitting that on this podcast. I hate Miami. Bunch of pompous pricks. I hate you.
I wish I sent that out intentionally today. I really wish there was some more Mac people in the chat so that the Miami people could throw at you going to BGSTDU.
No, whenever they fucking hockey fans, whenever the band's playing the fight song ends with BGSU, and then in the crowd they go CKS. I'm like, real fucking original, guys.
That's great. I love it. All right, so we're split on that. Good thing the ATS is over because I beat you so bad it won't matter. But for funsies now,
it won't matter. You did beat me so bad it won't matter. Also on Saturday night, 10 o'clock, the other big one, Clinton, Penn State. I don't know if back. Did
you just say 10 o'clock? It's on CBS.
8 o'clock.
You said 10.
No, I said 8.
Adam, when you listen to this tomorrow, please text me and confirm that he said it 10 o'clock, just like he called me Cleveland a month ago.
Say this is Cleveland all over again.
8 o'clock on CBS, which is mind-boggling. Why is it not on Fox? It's always been on Fox. Gus and Joel are going to have an aneurysm over this.
No. I'm very glad I don't. I've been very glad I don't have to listen to them.
So, are we still going to get Big Noon at least there? I would assume. There's not a big CBS pregame show.
They got CBS Sports has their own pregame show. Just no one watches it.
Well, I guess they will now.
Well, they always do. They're always on. They're on the road at Notre Dame.
Fox is going to be. Fox is going to be the Big 12 championship.
Tom Fernelli and Damian Harris. It's like I don't give a shit.
I remember Tom Fernelli.
Oregon is a 3.5-point favorite. We're off the rails here. I can't read. We knew this about me.
Can't read, can't write. Can't write. Sorry.
Can't read. We're lobbing bombs all over the MAC tonight. Good God.
That's because the Bobcats, baby. OU. Number one.
Number one party school in America. Ohio
win or lose, we still booze.
I was kind of surprised how low this line is, Clinton. I'm not going to lie to you. I thought it'd be a little bit higher, and then I thought more about it. It was kind of that weird kiss of death thing, right? Like DraftKings dropped their early line for the Big Ten title game a week ago before the game, and it was, I think, Ohio State -3.5 over Oregon. And what were they? Do you remember what they were when they went to Happy Valley? Were they 7-point favorite?
6.5, I think.
Okay. Plus 3 points to Penn State for the home field advantage. So we could then garner that on a neutral field. Ohio State would have assumed to have been like a 9 to 10 point favorite over Penn State. Then, we got some chats. I wonder if we got some MAC people who are barking at us here.
It's just me responding to the kind person who shouted us out, and then I couldn't spell appreciate 3 different times.
That's so embarrassing for you.
I'm trying to look at you and smash in an S, and then I put appreciate. We appreciate you.
I appreciate you. So if we're operating under the assumption that Ohio State would have been about a 3.5-point favorite over Oregon, and then that they were already a 7-point or a 6-point favorite on or no, wait, they were 4.
Ryan, you're
Okay, that's why.
too
Okay,
much,
that
you're
makes
losing
no,
me.
that's fine. That makes sense. So they were a 4-point favorite at Penn State, so they would have been a 7-point favorite on a neutral site. So if the early line was Ohio State minus 3.5, so we're saying Ohio State's 3.5 points better than Oregon, and Oregon's 3.5 points better than Penn State. That makes sense. So I thought that was the transitive math that I did to make sense of this line, because originally I thought Oregon would have been about a 7-point favorite, and it was 3.5, and I'm like, do I hammer 3.5 here? Is that a stinky line? I don't think it's a stinky line, and I don't know how much I like this matchup for Oregon, Clinton, because there's some dudes up front for Penn State in that front seven who are going to get after Dylan Gabriel in this game. And if Oregon's offensive line is not up for the challenge in this game, I think that this could be a really fascinating game. Again, we have the stoppable force versus the movable object. Dan Lanning has not won a conference title in 2 years. Not that, I mean, I'm saying that as if it's disparaging, but James Franklin has not won a conference title since 2016, and he can't win big games. We saw it again this year. Big game James. 2 years in a row now. Anytime Penn State has played a top 10 team, they have lost. Not necessarily in always the closest fashion.
Is that why they won the Big Ten championship? Wisconsin wasn't top 10.
And maybe. That could be. Could be why. There are probably going to be a lot of sacks in this game, Clinton. Oregon had 10 last week against Washington. They have 39 as a team this year. Jordan Burch has 8.5 despite missing parts of like 5 games this year. Mateo Uiagalelei, I believe, leads the Big Ten in sacks this year with 10.5. Really good breakout season for him. On the other side of the ball, Abdul Carter has 10 sacks. As a team, Penn State has 32. So both of these teams can get after the quarterback. Both of these teams have really good defenses, both top 10 in the nation in total defense. Could be a low-scoring game. The issue for Penn State is they are not good at stretching the field, and Oregon is finally getting healthy, and they have guys who absolutely can stretch the field. Oregon, like Miami, I never thought that I would be comparing Oregon to Miami in this game or in this episode. They spread the ball around well, and I think that's probably been a bit of an injury thing more than anything else, but they have 4 players with at least 35 catches and 490 technically receiving yards, and notably Tez Johnson, Terrence Ferguson, and Evan Stewart. So I feel like it would be irresponsible to not pick Oregon in this game, but I don't know, man. There's just this sneaking feeling in the back of my head that's maybe it's time. Maybe it's time that James Franklin does something, Clinton.
So, as always, Ryan steals my stats right off my sheet. I was so excited to talk about sack numbers today because I always love to talk about the trenches.
Oh, I thought you were about to say you just love talking about sacks.
Nope. Anyways, so let's talk a little bit about the offensive ranks. Oregon, 35.2 points per game. That's good for 19th in the country. Penn State, 33.3. That's 30th. So that's really only it's just under 2 points per game, and it's 11 spots difference. The defense is points per game. Oregon, 16.2, good for 9th in the country, and Penn State is 14, even at good for 7th in the country. Turnovers, just like sacks, they're important. Oregon, turnovers allowed. Oregon has allowed 11. That's 22nd in the country. Penn State, 10, 16th in the country. Turnovers forced. Oregon has forced 16. Good for 67th in the country. Penn State, 17. Good for 57th. Look at that. 1 additional turnover and you're 10 spots higher. Isn't that amazing? Ryan mentioned it. The battle of the trenches is going to be huge in this game. Which quarterback has more time? Which quarterback can make throws under duress? Both of them, I believe, they're sitting very similar in total interceptions. I think 5 and 6. I think Gabriel has 6. Aller has 5. My key to this game, how does Oregon try to stop Tyler Warren? Is this something where like a Kobe Savage tries to trail Warren around like Caleb Downs did? Mm-hmm. Do they sit in a lot of zone to try to just limit what he can do versus trying to man up and match him if they don't have someone that can do that? And for Penn State, I assume you're going to do what you always do with Tyler Warren. You're going to move him anywhere and everywhere all around the field to try to get him an advantage, whether it be quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver, hell, maybe even center again. Just do they get froggy enough to line him up at center and run something similar again? The duo of Allen and Singleton versus the Oregon run defense. Oregon's run defense only allows 118.2 yards per game. That's 23rd in the country. So they're fairly stout against the run. You and I watched them firsthand, though, give up a fair amount of yards to a horrendous Purdue team. Singleton, I believe we talked about with Matt Flip numerous times. He is the game breaker, right, if he can get outside. Katron Allen, more the bowling ball is going to beat you up on the inside. How healthy is Singleton? I don't know. It's been kind of an up and down season for him. You already talked about the sacks, so we don't need to rehash that. Penn State essentially needs Warren to have a good game to win. We already said he's going to be used in all facets. But who else can step up on this offense, specifically in the receiving game? You talked about all the different weapons that Oregon has. What else does Penn State offer in the receiving game? Julian Fleming, the experience? I don't think so. We've seen spurts from different players throughout the season. Big games against West Virginia, but then you play Ohio State and they don't do anything. We talked about, you just mentioned all of Oregon's playmakers out wide, and then in listening to some good old Ty today, Penn State likes to play a lot of tight press coverage. Guess what happened to Ohio State when they did that? They got smoked over the top.
PI. There goes Denzel Burke chasing someone.
Who's going to be burnt toast for Penn State if this happens? So, does Penn State continue to run that type of thing? Do they back off a little bit after seeing what Ohio State does? I think at this point, you're this late in the season. If you have to make adjustments maybe to the second half, you play what you play. Your DB's playing tight press coverage, feeds to Abdul Carter and Denai Sutton being able to get to the backfield. Those guys getting quickly to the backfield makes a hell of a lot less stress for that tight man coverage because you're going to have time to get the ball off. We saw it against Wisconsin. You get pressure on Gabriel. He's not tall. He can't see over the pressure. If you can force him to backpedal, he's not going to complete passes on you. Not deep passes, at least. He's going to have to go back to Duncan Dillon. You already talked about the coaching battle. It's another one you stole off my sheet. I have been to Lucas Oil, I think 4 times, at least 3. That place is insanely loud. Is there a home field advantage for Penn State here? I'd assume it's a lot easier for Penn State fans to get there than Oregon fans. I'm expecting a 60% to 40% or 70% to 30% in favor of Penn State. I'll let you know when I get there. But if Penn State can get the crowd behind them, it's not a whiteout. But all that sound gets capped in, man. It makes it really hard for the quarterbacks to face that. What is Dylan Gabriel? What's an environment he's walked into this year, a Big Ten environment that's had anything that's taxed him with play calling, snap issues? I'm intrigued. What is our line you got for this one?
I have Penn State or Oregon -3.5.
I am taking the Oregon Ducks -3.5. And I would bet the over of 49.5.
Would you really?
In this game? Yes.
See, I was going to take the under.
You are taking Oregon into an indoor track. That is not favorable for Penn State.
Yeah,
there's no wind, no nothing that can slow down this explosive offense. There's nothing explosive about Penn State's offense.
No.
The only explosive piece is Tyler Warren.
There is something that can slow down Oregon's explosive offense. That's Penn State's defense.
They can, but then, so I think you look at Oregon, though. You want to take away their downfield. What do they do best with Bo Nix? Short passes, swing passes, behind the line of scrimmage. That's an easy way to negate a pass rush. Draw plays with Jordan James, another way to negate an aggressive pass rush. I'm not saying it's a blowout. I just think they're going to score 50 points between the two. That's only 27-23, Ryan. You don't think they're going to do something like that?
No, I think it's going to be like a 24-17 game. The issue with this is I think it's going to be difficult for Penn State to score. more than 20 points.
Yeah, that's my thing. If Penn State can't keep Oregon below 21, I think they're going to lose. I don't know if they can hold Oregon that long. I like the Ducks to complete the 13-0 sweep of the Big Ten. Give me the Ducks minus 3.5.
No, I agree. I'm taking Oregon in the under in this one. It's just like, is Nick Singleton healthy? Because if he's not, that's going to limit a lot of what you do on offense. And we've seen it, and you touched on it. Like, it's just the Tyler Warren show. They haven't been able to consistently get anything else going. And are they able to scheme something up in this game where, hey, maybe we get Tyler Warren, a couple of passes underneath early, and maybe he breaks one where it causes Oregon to start playing up closer to the line of scrimmage because, these guys aren't going deep on us. They're trying to force feed this guy the ball, and he's killing us underneath, and we're missing tackles on him. So they bring guys in, and that's when you hit Amari Evans deep, or you hit Trey Wallace deep. I think that's the path. I just don't know how much success that they're going to have with that, just because we haven't seen it consistently this year. It's in the playbook, right? Like, I'm not sitting here saying Penn State can't hit a deep shot or two in this game. And the last time we had Matt on, he talked about it. Like, Penn State's a better deep ball team than we give them credit for. The issue is they're just not consistent with it. And now on the biggest stage, playing their toughest test of the season, no disrespect to Ohio State, like, you got to play a perfect game to win this one. Like, you can't make mistakes. You got to hit everything, man. Like, maybe they pull out some stuff that they have. Maybe Andy Kotelnicki, the big Zamboni. Thank God I don't have to hear that.
Who went and interviewed for West Virginia's job this past week. Distractions.
Maybe he's got something schemed up. Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe sometimes it's not the fact that you just need to be. Maybe you just need to simplify it, man. Play football. I don't think all this splash and dash is going to confuse Dan Lanning in Oregon. No, they know you're going to come out here and try to throw a bunch of random shit at them. So why not just play true to your game? Line up. Let your defense keep you in the game, and just make plays on offense. Feed your stars, which is Allen, Singleton, and Warren, and just hope somebody else can get open against Jabbar Muhammad, and I'm blanking on the other corner for Oregon.
I think what concerns me for Penn State in this game is kind of what we saw at the end of the Ohio State game when they needed to get a stop, and they were just kind of like bull rushing the line of scrimmage, and Ohio State just kind of found ways to counter and neutralize that while still running the ball. Because Dylan Gabriel's kind of Will Howard-esque in the sense that, he's not a run-first guy, but he has it in his back pocket if he needs it. I mean, we saw it in the Ohio State game. He pulls the zone read and runs for a 30-yard touchdown because Tuimoloau overcommitted on the backside. I just think there's
also has the ability just to pound Jordan James down your throat if they need to.
I think there's more ways for Oregon. There's more paths for Oregon's offense to be successful against Penn State's defense than vice versa. I don't know. Like, it seems pretty clear, like, Penn State's offensive game plan is get the ball to Tyler Warren and try to spring the ball outside. And we've seen it a couple times on Oregon this year where teams have had success running against them.
I think the other thing, too, that gives me the confidence in Oregon is they have the better offensive line. I feel much more confident about Oregon's offensive line against that pass rush than in reverse.
That's fair.
Why I'm leaning the Ducks.
Quack, I agree. We agree. Let's run through these other 7 conference championship games real quick. I have done little to no research on any of these, so these are going to be super well informed, and I guarantee you it's probably going to be the best I do this season because I'm not.
It's a little rapid fire. Fire.
We got 3 games Friday night. Clinton first one, Conference USA, 7 p.m. Western Kentucky versus Jacksonville State.
Played last weekend.
I was going to say this is a fascinating game because we have to go back all of 5 days to find out who the better team is from this game. These teams played literally last weekend, and Western Kentucky won that game 19-17. The issue for Jacksonville State is I think their quarterback got hurt in that game, and I don't know if he's playing in this one.
Okay.
Not a great passer, Tyler Huff, but he is a big running threat. He had 97 yards in that game before he got knocked out. Logan Smothers came in, was 4-6 passing for 62 yards. I'm still given that, I'm going to take Jacksonville State. I think it's we've said it 5 times on this show already tonight. It's really hard to beat a team twice, let alone on back-to-back
Same team
weekends.
twice in 5 weeks. What's the line on this?
Jacksonville State is a 5-point favorite.
Wow. Even
Yeah.
with the potential for the quarterback out.
Yep.
I'm going to be different just for fun. Give me Western Kentucky +5.
Good for you, man. 8 o'clock Mountain West Conference title game. Also with
Playoff hopes on the line for both
playoff
teams.
implications. This one very much seems like a win and you're in playoff game here. Boise is a 4-point favorite. Clinton, this one is going to be played on the blue turf. So home field advantage for Boise. And I did not look at the weather, but it has been cold as shit up here. I can't imagine it's going to be much warmer in Boise in this one. I'm going the running Rebels, man. Even though it's cold, going to be cold for them. They run the ball well. Malik Williams has been excellent since he has been inserted into the lineup. He's opened up the passing game a little bit more. And when they played earlier this year, UNLV almost beat them, man. Yeah.
I think Boise had an 8-minute drive in the fourth
to end the
quarter.
game.
Pretty much ran the clock out.
UNLV had one fourth quarter drive in that game. They entered the lead with they entered the fourth quarter with the lead, and they had one fourth quarter drive in that game.
The game plan for UNLV is stop Genty. The question is, can you? I believe they did hold him to his lowest total of the season.
That is correct.
Which is like 90-something yards. But this is his send-off. It worries me that Boise's going to get in a love affair of just purely trying to feature Genty to try to get him the Heisman. And then that costs them the game. The difference is Boise's at home this time. They're not at UNLV. Give me the Boise State Broncos locking up a 4, maybe potential 3 seed in the playoff by winning this game on the Smurf turf. Maybe they'll dump a big old Gatorade bucket of French fries to honor the Idaho Potato Bowl for this one. But give me the Broncos. Give me the Broncos. What time is this one?
8 o'clock.
Eastern?
Yes, Eastern, Clinton.
Yay, I can actually watch it.
Ashton Genty is banged up. I think he left their last game a couple times with them. I think they said an ankle injury, so that'll be fascinating to watch.
He's fine. He's a monster. He's fine.
Also, Friday night, the American title game. This one probably does not have playoff hopes after Tulane laid an egg against Memphis last weekend, but the Green Wave, a 5-point favorite in this one, traveling north to New York, Clinton, to take on Army.
New York!
Army.
Concrete jungle.
I'm taking the Black Knights, man. Home field advantage. You got the weather. You got the running game. Bryson Daly, Captain America.
Tulane's quarterback's too good. Give me the Green Wave. They also have the better coach, who's probably going to be going to a Power 4 job after this.
I was going to say, speaking of distractions, there's going to be some people coming after John Summerall. Back to Saturday. We're getting some... I like how these are spread out. This is very nice. Big 12 title game is at noon. Iowa State against Arizona State. I believe this is at Jerry World in Dallas. Arizona State is a 2-point favorite in this one, Clinton. I think... I truly don't have an earthly clue. I think Iowa State's passing attack in this one, plus their defense, maybe a little bit better, but I'm going with Kenny Dillingham and Cam Scatterbo. Give me the Sun Devils.
Better defense, Iowa State. Red hot. The red hot Sun Devils of Arizona State. I think I'm riding the hottest team. I think they're the hottest team in the country behind Notre Dame. Give me Arizona State.
4 o'clock SEC title game. We kind of talked about this one a little bit earlier-ish. Pseudo home game for Georgia in Atlanta. They take on Texas, who's technically the home team, and a 2.5-point favorite in this one. Clinton, I think the Longhorns get a measure of revenge here. Hot take. I think Arch Manning ends up being the quarterback of record in this game.
Interesting. Well, if you want to talk about quarterbacks, it's been pretty underwhelming play from both of them this year, yours and Carson Beck. But we are at the time of year of Ryan where giving is at its most important. And Carson Beck loves to do nothing more than give gifts to the opposing team and throw interceptions. I'm going to say Beck throws at least 2 interceptions in this game. Texas has the better defense. Texas is the more consistent team over the course of this year, even though they've had some ugly games. They didn't play a 4-quarter game with UMass. I don't know where Georgia's at. This is not the Georgia team of past. I know Kirby Smart is the ultimate motivator. They lost in the SEC title last year. It seems idiotic to go against them to lose again. But I think Texas is the better team, and I think they avenged the loss. Give me the Longhorns.
Speaking of weird coaching situations, Clinton, Sun Belt title game, 7:30, Marshall against Louisiana. Marshall coach Charles Huff does not have a contract for next year. He said he wants to come back, but has allegedly been interviewing for other jobs. Louisiana, 6-point favorite in this one. I'm going to take the Ragin' Cajuns.
I'm also taking the Ragin' Cajuns.
I know nothing else about this game. And then at 8 o'clock, another playoff play-in game, potentially.
Well, Marshall's a rival to OU. I'm not picking him.
Bingo. Clemson versus SMU in North Carolina. SMU a 2-point favorite, Clinton. What are you feeling for this one?
Clemson has been, the word inconsistent doesn't even cover them this year.
Mm-hmm.
They have showed no spine against any team of note this year. They struggled with Lenore Sellers last week. We talked about this. Jennings is not his exact size, but he's mobile and he has a good arm. SMU has shown the ability in all their games this year, if they're struggling to find a way to adjust to what another team is doing. I think if Clemson wins this game, you're looking at the defensive line advantage that Clemson has, that SMU has not faced as an offensive line this year. I just have no faith in Clemson in this game. I know Dabo's won it a few times. They kind of own Charlotte. I believe Charlotte's where they host this at.
Yep.
I just think it's new blood, man. I think we're going to see Oregon, Arizona State, and SMU, all three coming to and Texas. We're going to clean sweep of the Power Four. All four new teams win their conference in their first year. Give me the Mustangs. And quite honestly, Ryan, I wouldn't be surprised if SMU beat them by double digits.
I agree with everything you just said about SMU and Clemson this year. And that being said, I'm going to take Clemson to win outright.
Soft as Charmin.
I think there's going to be a little bit of culture shock for SMU in this one. One, given the big stage, and two, given that Clemson's defensive line is probably by far the best defensive line that they have seen this season. Like, this is not the time. Like, we talked about it a little bit with Notre Dame USC last week. Like, big culture shock for Notre Dame playing a passing offense for the first time all season that can test you. And Jade Maeva threw for like 400 yards. I think it's going to be something similar for SMU in this game. I think that they're going to have a difficult time running the ball. And Cade Klubnik's had a pretty good year. Cade Klubnik's had a pretty good year. Like, quietly, sneakily, because
Phil Moffa's got additional rest. They sat him after like one carry in their last game. I just don't think Clemson's consistent enough, man.
I agree they're not consistent enough, Clinton, but you don't have to be consistent. You just have to be better on this one day.
I also refuse to believe a team can back-ass their way into a title game, then win it, and to get a playoff spot. That feels such BS to me. I can't allow it to happen.
Well, Clinton, my parents told me something when I was a kid.
If SMU loses this game just because of how Clemson is, then they should be out, because you shouldn't lose to this team.
My parents told me something when I was a kid. Life is not fair.
My dad told me, wish in one hand and shit in the other and see which one fills up faster.
I love that saying. All right, y'all, that's all we have for you tonight. We will not be live on Saturday night because Clinton will be in Indianapolis, and it will be very difficult for him to be at his computer and in Indianapolis at the same time. So we'll be back on our Sunday night show, 9 p.m. Eastern time. That will also allow us to break down the playoff field, since the final committee rankings are going to come out.
Yeah, I did that on purpose. I did that totally for us.
I think the show starts at 12. If it's anything like last year, they'll probably come out around 12:30, so I will not be watching that. I will be enjoying my Sunday, and then I'll pull it up on Twitter after the fact. So we'll recap the conference title games. Clinton will talk about his experience in Indianapolis, hopefully a good time, and nobody throws any projectiles at him. And then we'll break down the playoff field. Should be 4 Big Ten teams plus Notre Dame in the field. So exciting times. Exciting times for us. We'll have a lot to break down. Looking forward to talking to you guys about that. Enjoy the games this weekend, guys. It's our I can't even say the last football Saturday of the year because that first playoff Saturday is going to be pretty great. But truly the last football Saturday of the non-playoff part of the season. Enjoy it. It's the last one we get until August. Sad day. Thanks for joining us tonight, guys. We'll see you on Sunday.
See you.
That's depressing.
Sure is. What you need
So-